Welcome in to the Thursday edition of Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. It's the best in paranormal podcasting, 20 years strong, folks. And I got to tell you, I'm absolutely proud of that. And speaking of that, you know, in 20 years, we've had guests that have run the complete gamut. Everyone from ghost experiencers to cryptid researchers to alien abductees. And as a matter of fact, today's guest is an author. There's a brand new book out there called Papa and Me, The Secret Life of Jade. And this is a children's book, but it's a unique children's book. And I got the pleasure of being able to dig into it and being able to talk a little bit with the author of this book. To give you an idea, the author of this book, Jade Astra, is an experiencer. And has managed to do something that most experiencers don't do. Took a horrific experience for most people and turned it into a positive. And we'll get Jade's experience here in just a moment. But she had profound encounters with various interdimensional entities, and each had a unique lesson. So we'll go through that with her. And basically the way the book sets up is that her hero in the book has encounters with these unique, different aliens as well. But they each have loving, kind things for our hero. In the name of the book, again, Papa and Me, The Secret Life of Jade, Jade, the hero, has these encounters as well with various interdimensional entities. They each have these different lessons. The reader meets everyone from Pleiadians to a Mantis being that has scientific knowledge to Feline Beings. And the central theme is the connection there. And really, to me, it had kind of a double meaning. And it was a really, really cool book. I really got into this book. And I myself have a brand new great nephew. So I know I'll have a copy of the book from my great nephew. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring in for the first time the author of this wonderful book. It's called Papa and Me, The Secret Life of Jade, Jade Astra. Hi, Jade. How are you?
Hi, Tim. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I probably stumbled here in the meaning of the book and the explanation of the book, but help me out here a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the book first. Tell me a little bit about the concept of the book and your hero Jade. And by the way, the art in this book is amazing. Tell me a little bit about the construct of the book and these different aliens and how you came across putting these different aliens in each stage of the book and why.
Well, with the book, I would say the words, the text, I actually wrote probably within 10 minutes. And it was something that came about just as an outlet for what I had been experiencing at that time. You know, I had my own experiences as a kid, and family members had them. And then when I reached a certain age and really started to, work on becoming a better person, maybe have a more spiritually focused, goal in life, I began experiencing more. And life just kind of introduced me to people synchronistically to help me open up and let go of fear that I knew that a lot of other contactees still had. And once I let go of that fear, that's when everything just started. I don't know what the skyrocketing as far as paranormal phenomena.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's go back to the beginning, and then we'll work our way towards the actual book itself. Let's talk a bit about the first time that you knew you had or you were having an actual encounter with a being. Do you remember that very first time?
I would say my first memory, I wouldn't say it was with a being. I remember weird things happening, like waking up, and it was just a very, very short memory. I was probably middle school and floating through my window, but not seeing anything else, just floating through my window. And also probably maybe things I would do that when I was a kid in our house, I had my bedroom, and across from my bedroom was a guest bedroom that no one slept in. So, for instance, one night, for no reason, I just decided to sleep there. And lo and behold, I wake up, I look at the clock, it's 2, and then immediately I know to look out the window, and there's this giant glowing ball, probably like the size I remember thinking it was a quarter, just in the sky. And as I'm just staring at it, I begin seeing smaller red lights coming out of it, swirling around. And I'm just watching it for maybe an hour. And, things like that, and things very vivid, what you just say dreams, it's one of those in betweens that was really weird. That wasn't just a random dream. I don't know what to do with it. Keep it in the back of my head kind of thing. And I would say my first conscious encounter with a being was probably in my early 20s.
So how old were you when you saw these lights that were kind of dancing around?
Probably middle school. Middle school, on the verge of going to early high school. This is something that, my father kind of mentioned different things, like different stories. Like he grew up at a farm, the men in black coming and, talking to his parents about something that was going on, the kind of the classic story, and his stories of having missing time. So it wasn't something that shocked me. It was just more of, this is just something that was kind of part of our family, and you just kind of dealt with it kind of thing. I think out of my siblings, I kind of was the most open to it. I think my brothers were definitely creeped out by it. I will say that much.
Okay, so I'm going to backtrack even further with you here. So Dad's talking about missing time and Men in Black. Did he ever mention that he had seen creatures or craft?
No, the one story that he mentioned when I was a kid, besides the whole being on the farm and the Men in Black coming, was being at the dentist and remembering how the dentist was just really baffled because he found what looked like a small triangle piece of glass in his gums. He didn't go in for pain or anything. It's just something he found, but he didn't keep it. He didn't think to keep it. And, one or two stories of him waking up in just like a random place as a kid on the farm, things like that. And then I would say one of the childhood memories where it kind of started to become really emotional time for me was seeing my dad. I was with him when he was being regressed by a investigator, Joel Lewis, with MUFON.
Okay.
And, my father had always been my father, the stern discipline, the parent figure. And being in the room while he was being regressed for this missing time incident and seeing him be scared and taking the gasps of air and kind of sobbing as he's going through this experience of being in fear, that's when it was just like I guess it's just kind of a memory that I would never forget. It's still with me.
With that, when you see the terror in his eyes, what are you assuming it is that he's reliving? Do you think he's reliving an actual visitation?
I honestly had no idea. I knew generally the background of, from hearing discussions with Joe Lewis and things that were going on. Basically, I knew he was trying to get back memories of what he had forgotten. I know he had a tale where he was driving, to work in a winter storm, and then all of a sudden he's just parked in some parking lot out of nowhere. weird things like that. And I think that was the moment that he was trying to get those memories back.
And he never said anything about, with this lost time, that he thought he might have been abducted? He never intimated that might have been a thing?
He discussed his weird encounters. It wasn't something that he said 100% for sure he knew he was abducted. He just knew that things were happening to him. So it was just an experience that he didn't remember. But along his life, he has a couple of different experiences.
Wow. Now, we've always heard on this program, Jade, I'll be completely honest with you, that when, and especially from our good friends at Opus, they've told us this, that it tends to go down the family bloodline, that abductions happen down the family bloodline. It tends to, and sometimes it'll skip a generation. So if your grandfather was abducted, maybe it skips your father, but it goes then to the grandchild. But it sounds like if they went after your father, then maybe they came for you too. In the times, and I know we're skipping ahead a little bit here, but in the times that you had encounters, did you ever have anything lucid enough where they told you there's a reason why we came for your father, now we came for you?
Ooh. Are you saying like an actual telepathic conversation about this topic?
Yeah.
There was never a conversation about, not in the way that you put it, we came for your father, we came for you. It was more of a, in my experience, kind of a I don't know how to call it without sounding cheesy, but like a spiritual awakening kind of thing.
Okay.
This is something that I had these experiences and I had the choice of what I wanted to do with them. I could go two routes. I could, be stuck in fear and just kind of be kept in the dark, or I could let go of that, open up, and, there was kind of hints of, the more that I let go of fear and the more that I reached out with an open heart, they would do things. We would have different interactions, which became really fun. So that's really what started opening the door. It wasn't, them saying anything. It was more of them observing me, watching me, see how I would react, and then, presenting something new, a new experience to see what I would do next. And that's kind of why it kind of began on a journey of beginning to open up and meeting a lot of different types of beings.
Okay, so you said it was right around 20 when you really started to have the more lucid experiences, correct?
Yes, in high school I had classic memories. Like I remember I was walking towards a neighbor's house, going one direction. I look up, there's a giant triangle. It had a red glowing light in the middle, and on the corners were three small white lights. And I don't know why, but I literally in my head, I said, that's not a UFO, I can hear the wind. And that makes no sense. The next memory, instead of looking up, I'm walking the opposite direction that I was going. And then another memory, same thing with another ship. I was walking in my neighborhood and I look at the sky and I see a UFO. It was like a disc shape, but in the middle there was a band that looked like you could see lines for windows that would light up in order going around. And I remember just staring at it and being confused because as I'm looking at it, it seems like it's going in the ground. It visually didn't make sense, but it was definitely something that I didn't forget as well. So weird things like that, seeing ships and the vivid dreams of, flying through my window, or more dreams of sensations of flying was a very common thing before I started to actually see beings.
Let me ask you this: as being that you were an older abductee, mind you, you didn't have many memories of being younger and being abducted, but you held on to a lot of memories as you were older. Do you remember in your limited communications with them? I'll say limited, but not knowing for sure whether they were limited or not. I should ask you that. Do you remember having a lot of communications with them?
There was a period where once I opened up, yes, it turned into a lot of communication. And I would call it, after I really let go of fear, there was this being who I could tell was always with me. I nicknamed him Professor. He had this kind of teacher energy vibe to him. We would discuss things, but it was interesting because the way it really ramped up was there was a period where, things were happening and I could feel changes in my body. And for instance, there was a time where I would drive home past this one light, and every time I would go past it, it would just flicker off. And I remember hearing about that phenomenon for other people, just like, I was like, oh, okay. So I go and I just sit outside and I wait and see other people walking, other people driving. It doesn't happen to them, just to me, for me. There's a period when electronics were going berserk. And then that's when I started to feel, first in my left lobe, I think, of my brain, a pulsing. And it would happen for like 30 seconds. And then after that, it would have this telepathic communication with Professor. That's what I would call. That's his nickname. We'll just call him Professor. Sure. Never saw him, but I knew that this is someone who's watching me, someone who's observing me. So for a while, it would just, whether it was an implant or I don't know, it would just start buzzing and I could feel it in my head. And then as my body became more sensitive, then the same thing started happening in my right side of my head. And then the communication became clearer and clearer. And that this was kind of a stage before I really started having the conscious contact of physical, right in front of me, in front of, as in my bedroom.
Did Professor ever say, or did any of these aliens, whoever came to take you away on these adventures, did they ever say where exactly they were from? Or did they ever say we're from a physical place? Or did they say they came from another dimension and then came back to get you?
I think for my personal experience, it's important to point out that, I was having a lot of contact and I could sense that my encounters kind of had a different feel to them. A different energy about them. So, for instance, one of the encounters that made me kind of go to Barbara Lamb's support group, just because it was intense, and I do believe I was, having different encounters with different beings, different groups, different ways of doing things, just like people. Mm-hmm. So this encounter, where I was conscious, I remember this is in my early 20s, and I was on a ship, but I was not my normal personality the way it is now. And the other contactees from Barbara Land's support group said, oh, that's your alter, an alter. Okay, well, for whatever group maybe that I've been with when I was younger, they do whatever they do. So you have a role in the ship. So I was that human face. I was looking at this person laying on this table. He was a young guy, probably around my age, short hair, but I never forgot him because he had this tattoo, this large tattoo on the side of his face. Very, very distinctive. And the whole experience was, I was telepathically, I told him, I said, it's okay, it'll be over soon. And as I'm looking at him, all of a sudden, my vision, it zooms into his eye, and I see his pupil change into what looks like kind of like a reptilian eye slit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it zooms back out. And then I can feel his fear. Um, he's trying to scream, but he can't really move. And then I wake up and I'm back in bed. I'm just wide awake. My heart's beating. That was one memory of encounter. But other ones, other encounters, I felt like I was with an angel. Honestly, just a light being having angelic energy. And it was just such a contrast that I didn't know what to make of it. And that's why I really needed support and went to Barbara Lamb, because there was just so much going on at once. It was trying to make sense of everything.
We'll talk about Barbara here in the second part of the program and how she helped you kind of wade through those waters and kind of divine through who was who and what was a good feeling and a bad feeling, because that's kind of an interesting part of this too. So with that, you say, I had to kind of let go and kind of surrender to that. There's such a thing as self-preservation here, Jade. I think we all have that internal instinct, right? There's a reason why we feel fear, or there's a reason why we have that fight or flight response when something happens. It's there so that we continue to exist. How do you initially, when you're given that ultimatum, if you just relax and go with it, this can end up being a good experience. How do you learn to trust, and what was the carrot that was put out there, so to speak, to get you to decide that, okay, these are trustworthy beings that I can do this?
Thinking back, it's meeting a woman named Cynthia Crawford. I was having all these different encounters and talking to people at the support group and kind of trying to make sense of it all. And they told me to go talk to her. She was the person. And I went to a UFO conference where she was speaking. And I met her. And it's funny because, the first thing she said as she's, looked at me, she's probably in her 60s and, I'm in my 20s. And she literally looks at me and says, "Oh, you have a lot of implants," just like that. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah. So I start talking to her and tell her that someone from support group told me to talk to her. And I kind of gave her a rundown of what was going on. And she gave me a brief story about her life, her background, how her father was in the OSS and military, and the things that she had experienced, and that what she found in her contacts is that when she let go of fear, that everything changed. And that's something where, other things we talked about that kind of hit home, that later on she mentioned about, if you experience this, do this, like feel love kind of situation. I actually remembered what she told me during an encounter, which surprised me, because I've had those experiences where I remember waking up and I'm floating above my bed and I'm being turned and I can't move, and there's a 6 foot tall gray, but a creamed color gray. And as I'm being floated around to a different part of the room, and I look at him, his body language, telling me it's okay. He comes closer, and I feel, okay, they're doing something obviously to my reproductive system, but I don't remember what happens after that. I just wake up and I know something happened. I can feel it physically in my body. I've had those encounters. And, she explained she had those as well. But, when it comes to interdimensional phenomena, mm-hmm. It's not just, nuts and bolts. There's an energetic aspect to it where basically the phrase she put it is that you have the power to choose who you want to have contact with, but you give up your power if you give into fear and anger. And I remember, when I first met her, I kind of thought that was a little crazy, but I remembered her words. I did have an experience with not an ET, but I would call it a entity, where I had a period where I was going through a lot of stress, and I woke up and I can't open my eyes, but if I see what looks like this blue glowing, I don't know what to call it, blob, just starts to cover me, and I feel it on my body. And I remember what Cynthia said about when something happens, just feel love. So at that time, I immediately thought of my dog, Loki. He's Loki the First, is the one in the book.
Okay.
And as soon as I started to feel love, I could feel it slough off of me, and then I could move again. So that was one of the first things of like, she's like, she has something here. There's something to this. And that's when I started to really, be less afraid, be more open.
Okay.
Try to reach out. I had these encounters, reach out telepathically and kind of say, hey, let's try something like I'll be in bed, but you can touch my hand while I'm sleeping. It became this interaction of things. Like, for instance, we went to Barbara's support group one day, and someone brought these little arm floaties for kids, but they're in the shape of grays. So I took one home. I noticed that it had a hole on its head. And so I put a little piece of tape in the shape of a triangle on the hole, and I put it above my bed where I was sleeping. So probably about a week later, I wake up and I immediately look down, and there's this it's just like a dark imprint of a triangle on my chest. And I'm just kind of, awestruck, like, what is this? And then part of me, my logical mind kicks in. Did I sleep on something? Is there something in my bed? Is there something in my sheets? And then I just go look in the mirror and I look at it, and it's just this perfect triangle. And it was like a dark, like my skin had changed dark color. The same pointing way of the one that I put on the little gray floaty. And by the time I thought, oh, I should take a picture, it was already fading away. So there's nothing I could do, but interactions like that started to happen. And then once I just kept showing I didn't have fear, that I really did want to, kind of learn more about what was really going on. What is the purpose of this? That's when I started having more conscious encounters with beings, physical beings in front of me.
See, that's the separation between, most people would have freaked out, dark triangle on your chest. Most people would have lost it and been like, what is going on? They would have flipped out. They would have freaked out. The fact that you maintained your cool and went, all right, well, let's roll with it and see what else there is. That shows a couple of different things, right? I mean, not only does that show, it shows a sense of adventure, one, but two, it shows almost a, what's the word I'm looking for here, Jade? A sense of almost a willingness to throw off the bonds of trying to think of the right words here.
It's kind of, I felt like that. There was nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Well, it's almost throwing off the bonds of self-preservation. That's the words I was looking for there. Almost like, you know what? And I don't know necessarily at that point if that's a healthy thing, right? Because again, I guess the question I had asked earlier was, what did they dangle out there for you to get them to trust you? Because there was, it's a two-way street. It's, normally like in a relationship, any healthy human relationship, it's, if you put yourself in my hands, I'll get you here. Or,
Mm-hmm.
it's we'll build each other up, right? We'll bring each other to new heights, right? In a relationship, if I'm in a relationship with somebody, it's, you know what, I can't get to a certain spot in life without you. You lift me up, you make me a better person, right? You build me up, I build you up. We get better places in life together than we do separately, right? So there's that bond there. There's that trust. I guess I'm wondering what it was that they offered you that you thought, you know what, nah, I'll throw this craziness into my life just to see and possibly change my life irrevocably, so that I can find out what it is they have to offer me, because it could change me permanently and not for the good. What was it that made you trust that?
There was a point where I do remember, a conversation, like one of the most important conversations I had with professor. And, this was like 20 something years ago. The gist of the conversation was, I remember saying, I want to know what is real, what is reality, what is going on here, so I know how I want to live my life, how I want to live my life moving forward. Because, when you're experiencing this type of paranormal phenomena, it makes you look at life differently. It makes you really think about the spiritual side of life with all these weird encounters, and you're not just stuck in a grind of just going to work, going to sleep, and then repeat. So I think that was really the moment when they started opening up and let me experience more. Because after that, that's when, like I said, they give me tidbits, little pieces. Like, for instance, another encounter I had after that was waking up, and each instance I'm allowed to remember more and more. And I think had I reacted in fear, they wouldn't have allowed me. They would be too obtrusive. But I wake up, I'm in my bed, what looks like my bedroom, but I see this, what looks like electrical grid all along the wall. So I can move my eyes, I can't move my body. And I see something, like, the movie Predator.
Yeah.
You can kind of see the outline, but you can't really see him. He's clear.
Yep.
Someone is walking from the left of my room over to the right. So I see them as they're walking, and I see this fence. They go to where my closet is, and I see that they open a drawer, but there's no drawer in there where my real closet is. So I can make out I'm not in my room. I don't know where I'm at, but this is not my room. And then I black out, and then the next moment it's like, okay, oh, that was interesting, So, I'm trying to think of another encounter. It's just, there's so many where I feel like, I think it was my reaction is why it became that relationship. For instance, I do remember one encounter where it felt like, when I had reached that point of letting go of fear, that I started being able to differentiate the quality of the different encounters. So I was kind of piecing together, I was meeting with different beings. Like, it started out when I was younger, maybe a little, had a scary quality to it, but then it evolved the more I let go of fear. So I do remember having an encounter where the whole experience was me being in a ship, and I was with, I don't remember what they looked like. They kind of muted their looks out, so I didn't really pay attention to them, but I was watching how they do things. I was watching them. I remember being on a ship and then being in someone's yard and just seeing people that kind of looked zoned out like zombies in this area. And it was just a really weird odd feeling that I was like, I don't like how this is being done. Whatever this is, yeah, no, I don't want to be a part of it, kind of thing. And I, that one being that you kind of get a sense for, you meet a person, you get to know them, you remember that aspect to them. I never met that being again. Whereas other beings where the encounter felt loving, like Papa. Papa is based on a very loving being that I grew a very strong bond with. And he got that nickname Papa, because that was the first conscious hug I received was from him. And I had never experienced anything like that before, especially not from, my human family growing up. So, having all these different experiences, and I know it just seems so out there to say, you got a hug from an ET, but it happened. So I'm having these things happening, and it's turning into something beautiful. So the more that I just let go, the more it went in that direction of positive.
Interesting. Tell you what, we'll take our break here. When we come back, I have an interesting question for you, and that's this. We'll talk about two different things. We'll talk about promises. We'll talk about promises, and we'll talk about belief from their perspective. I'll just tease it with that. We come back. Jade Astra is our guest, and the name of the book, and actually it's a children's book, and it's quite a good one. I hope you guys check it out. We'll have a link in the description of this program. It's called Papa and Me, The Secret Life of Jade, and it's a really charming book. The artwork is fantastic in it, and the story in it is quite charming. It's quite a lovely little story about Jade as Jade encounters the different individuals along the way, the different hybrid individuals along the way that take her on little adventures throughout the universe. So tell you what, when we come back, we'll talk with Jade a little bit about promises and spirituality of these beings. When we come back right here next on the Best in Paranormal Podcasting, this is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. My guest is Jade Astra. The name of the book is Papa and Me, The Secret Life of Jade, and it's a children's book. It's available right now. We have a link in the description of this program. So, Jade, I promised before we went to the break, we would talk about promises and spirituality, and that's how I teased it. So here's what I mean by promises. Did you ever get a promise from these beings that if you let go, if you played along, if you succumb to whatever it is that they needed you to succumb to just open up and follow along as they were observing or putting you through tests or whatever it was they were doing, that they would in return give you something, give you a power level, give you abilities, give you whatever it is that they would give you? Was that exchange ever promised to you?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. So,
it was just pure interaction, and I guess their observation of me. When the topics we would discuss with Professor about, my life and what I was experiencing with the changes, my psychic senses opening, the more contact I had, and what I kind of, my opinion of them with what limited information I had. It's not like I could remember 10 minutes. I remember bits and pieces of encounters, but I was able to, to eventually, make sense over time of what was going on.
Okay. Spirituality. That's the other question I have. Did they at any time ever mention to you, or did you ever ask them, do you have a belief in a higher power, and what is it?
I never one-on-one asked about their personal belief in a higher power. I think it was more like discussing topics that would lead to my own questioning. It was never about them and what they believed. It was about my understanding of who I was as a piece of creation.
Okay.
So I didn't get the sense of them indoctrinating me into any belief. It was more of helping me think and explore about my connection to whatever you want to call God, source, creator.
How did they explain that? I'm curious.
Oh man. I think the ETs didn't really explain it. I feel like I had these encounters and life brought synchronistic circumstances my way that kind of led me to events, people, experiences that kind of helped me formulate my own personal beliefs as far as, going along the spiritual route of, what I am more than just flesh. So I was having all these encounters and, side discussions with Professor, but it wasn't anything that was really in my face. It wasn't anything to try and influence me one way or the other. I just definitely know that, I was being, guided to maybe think outside of the box from, I grew up in the South, the Bible Belt.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I never understood organized religion. It was never something I was really into. So these concepts that kind of came forward of, having a deep connection with Creator and not going to another person for that connection. That's kind of something I resonated with. So I hope that answered your question. It's just kind of murky because, I did have these few discussions with Professor that they were along the spiritual route, but it was never my direct experiences with them that were really pushing me to go that route. It was the other part of my life and everything else that was happening.
So they never mentioned anything to you like, well, in a past life you were one of our tribe or anything like that, and we felt the need to come back and
no, I've heard about that with other people, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the belief that, what do people use the term? Like, we're all one, we're all part of creation.
Mm-hmm.
You have past lives, you have many past lives. So what does it really matter? Why do you need to differentiate or say that one species is more important than the other? I did get a sense from certain encounters that yes, obviously due to the amount of contact I have ties, however you want to call it, past life, but I never got fixated on any one.
Yeah. Okay. You had mentioned earlier in the program that you were floating above your body. You saw things that they were potentially doing with your reproductive system. Are we to intimate that potentially something was done with your reproductive system and there might be something with a alien human hybrid, maybe?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
With what they were doing, I felt what was going on, and it didn't feel painful, thank goodness. Now, this was the earlier encounters before, it started evolving into the more positive. This was kind of what led up to it. So it was 100% in my mind. I knew, I remember when I hit puberty,
Mm-hmm.
there were times where I woke up with the taste of, I was just remember thinking, my mouth tastes like a penny, like copper. And And one of, years later, one of my older contactee friends said, oh, that's because your adrenals were in overdrive for whatever experience you're having. But I also would wake up every now and then with this clear fluid in my belly button. And then, I would like just rub it in between my fingers and it would dissipate. And that's something that, as I'm a preteen and a teen, I noticed it. I wondered about it. But it's not until later in the future when I started going to support group at Barbara's. And then I heard from the other females like, oh, yeah, that's because, they're doing stuff with the hybrid program. So that kind of also clicked information together.
Wow. So at that point, do they tell you you're going to have any contact with the child whatsoever? Or do they say this child is now part of us? We do whatever with this child. Do they even let you know what they're going to do with the child?
I never had any experience like that with direct communication. I had two separate experiences dealing with that, hybrid topic. One was an encounter where I remember I was awake and I was looking in front of me and it looked like there was like this rocky kind of desert scene. And there was a small, like it looked like a small, I don't know if you want to call it a scout ship UFO, just small, like a one person, like nothing big. And a being walks out of it. And I remember thinking it's really good looking, most likely Pleiadian, the blonde blue eyes. And it walks to me. And there's someone to my side, but I sense someone next to me, but I don't look because I'm just kind of like, where am I? What's going on? I wasn't scared. I was just kind of, paying attention to the present moment. So as it walks up towards me, I heard him say, this is the one with charisma. And I was like, ooh, okay. Well, obviously someone's been telling about my conversations with the professor. And then the next moment I'm looking at this little toddler, this little 1 to 2 year old boy. And this was probably around 2010.
Okay.
Or 2011 when this happened. And he's just smiling at me. And it's, I just knew it was a boy. Don't ask me why. I just felt it was a boy. And that was the whole encounter. I'm just looking at him, just kind of, saying in my head, I guess this is my hybrid. I guess this is my experience that all the other contactees talk about. And that was the whole encounter.
Did a name
There
pop?
was no explanation, no nothing. That was just it. So it's kind of like, in my mind, in my heart, I'm like, okay, there's a high probability. Will I know? Will I ever know? Who knows? But that's just one experience. The other experience I had was with a group I would call. So I've heard people label them, different beings, different agendas, different way of doing things regarding the hybrid program. Service to self, service to others. Mm-hmm. So you've got, I'm having all these different contacts and I'm sensing the difference in the feel and how they do things. So this is one group that I was in communication with an encounter with Grays. And with this encounter, they were kind of, I don't want to call it cold, but they weren't as loving, not as much loving energy.
Okay.
And the only thing I remember of that encounter was asking, do I have other hybrid children? And their response was they gave out numbers like 20. I have to look at my journal. It was like batch 27 or 21. Like they were numbers, they were names. And then they did briefly mention that they do. I don't want to use the word take, but had contact with one of my brothers. That they were focusing on one more than the other. And that was that one encounter. I never really wanted to go down deeper into it. I felt like I had I have this whole other life that I'm trying to live. I wasn't going to get obsessed over it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of something that always stayed in the back of my mind. I have hybrid children out there. It'd be great if disclosure happened one day and I could, meet them.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. Right. The other, and forgive me for going down this road, I know it may seem kind of morbid, Jade, but the other thing that pops to mind, two things that pop to mind. One, when you saw the 1 to 2 year old, did a name pop up in your head? Sometimes when you look at a baby, a name may pop up in your head.
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, nothing.
The other is knowing that your father probably had abduction experiences. Has it ever dawned on you, or did you ever ask the professor if maybe you have siblings who are hybrids?
To be honest, that never crossed my mind to ask that question. I think my focus was just on my experience. I never wondered, maybe because I didn't have a strong bond with my brothers, it just did not pop in to even question.
Huh. Okay. I didn't know whether it was something that they would be that forthcoming about, or maybe because they wanted to keep you separate from that life, or maybe in the dark from that life. I don't know if they consider those to be experiments. Do you know what I mean?
I think with the more positive groups, that if I pressed on it and I wanted to explore that if they felt it was the right time and in my best interest, they would have allowed that.
Okay.
But I just did not have that desire. I did not ask.
Interesting. It's fascinating stuff. Was there ever mention of an end goal or a reason why they would want to, why there's a breeding program at all?
Yes. This is my understanding. I've heard it's generally, when you look at other contactees' experiences and what they recount, it's a common theme of helping humanity evolve spiritually, helping them, whatever they do genetically that allows them to tap into more of who they are. When you live your life in a way that you're open and your psychic sense is open, and these other realms, these other things are tangible, it becomes, you feel energy, you can talk to plants, you can do all these things that just seemed so outrageous in science fiction that you really do want to live your life differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that is basically the goal. That's my understanding, is help humanity evolve in a positive direction so we don't destroy ourselves.
That makes good sense. I mean, we are kind of closed off. I mean, not kind of, we are. I mean, we are closed off. I guess my question from that then would be this. How many, or I suppose maybe they never told you that, but how many hybrids did they ever say to you how many hybrids they had walking around at this point?
No conversations like that. That would be interesting to know, though.
Yeah. And especially, I mean, I suppose they're not going to tell you how many total, but even like how many they had walking around in your area, or did they? I suppose they didn't mention to you if you didn't know if you had siblings, how many you had throughout the years, or how many in your family.
And I think part of it counts as to, when you think about what counts as a sibling, how much DNA percentage of yours does it need to be to count?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Did they? Okay, I have one other question here in this line of questioning, and then I think we'll get to the book here before we leave people today. And that's this. I do have another question about people put in your life. Did they ever tell you that they were putting people with potential alien human hybrid DNA in your life to date?
No, I had heard, murmurs of what people would call like the love bite or something, like trying to force relationships. I think that never. Okay, so at Barbara Lamb Support Group, there was one person who was obviously a contactee like me.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever beings he had around him, after dating him for 2 weeks, I wanted nothing of it. Okay. So for a while, I was just like, you know what? You're a contactee. No, I don't want to deal with that. You never know what they're going to come with. So that was my experience as far as dating. And, I think it was too overwhelming and too much going on that I was not one of those people who had that experience of, being drawn to someone who was also part of the program.
Yeah. I suppose it's a little close to home, right?
Yeah.
And then I guess the other part of it is, did they let you know that these beings let you know that they had put certain people in your life to make this transition of accepting them easier? Was Barbara Lamb put in your life to make this transition easier?
The message that I got, especially from my conversation with Professor, is that this lifetime, the people I were born to, my life circumstances set me up to put me at that current point as a contactee. My personality, my experiences to get to the point where, I was able to let go of fear and then witness I was have this interaction with various beings. And, like those pages in my books, some of them are the actual beings I saw, the short, there's this really cute, short, chubby, cream color gray with big fat rolls. That's literally what he looked like. I was, in my room. I remember just staring at him. He was as tall as my IKEA dresser and just wanting to just poke him and then black out, Mm-hmm. There's also a page that has these two redheaded looking, very skinny, pale hybrids. That was also an encounter. I had an actual encounter with Loki as well. He was actually awake. That was very surprising because normally he wouldn't be anywhere in these experiences.
How many different aliens do you think alien species do you think you've had encounters with?
Ooh, that I don't know, because I've had a couple encounters where they purposefully, I would say, I couldn't see their features. I could see their body, I could see their height, but I don't think that they didn't want me to be scared during the encounter. Mm-hmm. So obviously I did have, Greys, Pleiadians, some, I guess you would call them insectoid is the term. And an experience where I couldn't tell what it was because my whole experience is I was lying down and this was a being, I was awake and I was the personality I am now, kind of joking around, and I was telling him, change your hair color this way, do this, look like this, look like this. So his body was like morphing, and it was this encounter really stuck in my memory because this being, this ET, had a personality and he was nervous, like he was new at his job, whatever he was in charge of doing with me. And then I remember reaching out to touch. It looked like a human hand, but it wasn't. And I touched it and it felt really fuzzy. It was like one of those velvet posters that I remember as a kid. Yeah. And then at that point I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to stop. I was like, this is getting too real. I don't want to feel fear. And then that's when I you know, start having a conversation, and he mentions that he's not allowed to do, certain things with me, and I'd have to ask her. He says her, and I look to my right, and it's another insectoid, but the only way I could describe it is like being reality with parts screen memory. If you're familiar with screen memory, where it's like kind of cartoonish.
Yeah.
So it's like my mind can't make out what I'm seeing, but I see part of it.
Okay.
And then the next moment I'm back awake in bed and just like kind of being like, wow, that was okay. Now I have to go to school. Here we go.
That I can't imagine. Have you had any experiences where, I mean, so negative that you thought maybe you might not make it through?
That one experience I describe about being floating above my bed, being turned, and there's that tall, cream-colored gray in front of me. I see his full body, his feet to his head. And just be mindful, this is when, before everything starts to evolve to the more, I start having encounters with the more positive beings. It changes,
Mm-hmm.
I remember when they returned me, I was screaming blood or murder in my head. I was screaming, I'm going to kill you. Whatever they did, whatever happened to me, it was not, something that I obviously wanted to happen.
Yeah.
So I did have those types of encounters, but I was able to, overcome it. Wow. To really, that, and that's why Cynthia was put in my life to really, teach me that you can choose who to have contact with, or I don't want to say, given the circumstances of the story I've told, it's just that your contacts will evolve the more you evolve. Okay. And let go of fear. I can't tell you why. I just know that was my experience. So I went from having the experiences where I was helping, being that human face to someone who was, in fear on the table, to me being obviously in fear, having something done to me, to come out of it because I met Cynthia. And I no longer have encounters like that.
Okay. So you haven't had any, when was the last time you had an encounter?
I would say probably, so like seeing a ship up close, it's probably been a few years. Like a being in my room, that hasn't happened for also another couple of years. But as far as telepathic communication, like feeling sensations in my body in a conversation, like Papa, I've been with him for so long, over 20 years. He's someone that's kind of a regular, he doesn't pop in the physical realm a lot, but I definitely recognize when it's his communication.
Well, what do you suppose was the cutting off point, or what made it decide to cease?
Cease as far as
communication.
You mean as far as like face-to-face communication?
Yeah, as far as eventually in all relationships, either it gets old, or two people get tired of each other, or there's an argument, or something happens where the relationship breaks up. Did the relationship break up, or was it just one of those, they moved on? Or what do you suppose happened that there hasn't been communication in the last couple of years?
Well, As far as face-to-face direct communication, I know there was a period where I was having so much contact and trying to balance just living life, working, going to school, dealing with everything that was happening. And it became kind of, I don't want to say obsession, but all my attention went on them and not necessarily the message that they were trying to convey. So it became very thrilling. And I think at that point, looking back, I can see why they would pull back to make sure that I was headed in the right direction to go within, focus on the connection to creator and not just being, make your life about us. That was their goal.
Right.
And, I now live in Tennessee near an ashram. And the more that I do Kundalini Kriya Yoga, the more I do these practices, and my experiences are beginning to pick up again. So, and I've heard from other contactees, it goes in cycles, it goes in phases for whatever reason. I don't know why. So if something doesn't happen in a couple of years, I know that something's going to happen soon.
Okay,
that's just a given.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, and I can see that. So they have healthy boundaries. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. The ones that have your best interests at heart will definitely, if they sense that they were causing any disruption to your life, that it's not their place to cause that.
Yeah. Okay. As far as the book goes, so let me as we start to wind down here a little bit, Jade. Let me ask you this: when you go to write the book, then what is it that you hope to reach out to other potential contactees and tell them when it comes to, besides the fact that you may potentially be contacted by these beings? What do you hope to tell them if they get contacted by these beings? What's the main message?
The main message is to be in a place of love during your contact. Being in a loving place, for me, changed everything. And that's why I kind of wrote this book, to give a tool for parents, other generational contactees, to talk to their children about. Because in my personal experience, making that change changed everything. It opened up so many doors. And I really think, next generation of parents, of contactees, if they really take the time to help their children understand and let go of fear, this could be a huge thing in someone's life, especially from a young age.
What would you say to a parent that's like, oh, hell no, as far as, I don't want anything from another galaxy coming near my kid? What would you say to them?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think I would have anything to say. It's their life journey. It's their experience. You're on your path. I will share what I know, and then whatever you do with it, that's up to you.
Is it one of those things where you almost, it's another worldly thing, and you almost don't have any power over it? You almost can't take control over it?
I think there's certain situations where you wonder, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen in the future? So the encounters I've had, in the past, recently as an adult, definitely there was that aspect of I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel the fear. I didn't feel in danger, but it was happening, but I never said I wanted it to stop. So whether I'm not truly in control or not, who knows? But I'm not screaming bloody murder after an encounter. That's all I know. I'm happy. Mm-hmm. I'm in bliss. Mm-hmm. You know, I feel like I'm growing as a person. I'm becoming a better person because of it.
It seems to me like there's some semblance of control as you get older, that you know, you can take those breaks, and there's been some quiet in your life, right? You know, it seems like if there's some sort of an open dialogue there, and there's some sort of dialogue sans fear, that there can be an understanding. To me, it seems like it's more of an invasive relationship, though, at least on your end. Would you agree or disagree with that?
For me personally, you know, had you asked me this question when I was younger, I would have a different answer. Mm-hmm. But with who I am now, you know, I think I look at it as a spiritual purpose to it all, okay, as far as growth. So everything happens for a reason. But I know how that sounds crazy to your average person, who, you know, thinks differently. We're all in our own versions of reality, to be quite honest, based on our experiences and what we can perceive.
Sure.
So for me, that's kind of how I look at it.
Nothing wrong with looking at it that way. I think, you know, in all fairness, I think that when something is thrust upon you, you have two ways of looking at it, right? You either are being persecuted or you're being blessed. Mm-hmm. Let's face it. There's no other way to look at something. You either take on things with a positive or a negative attitude in this life. And, you know, the way things come around and the way things are treated in life all depends on how you treat the situation. And whether you're given, you know, if you're given a trip to a ship by an alien being, that could either be an adventure or it could be a nightmare, depending on what's done, right? And it all depends on your outlook and what's done, and whether you choose to form a relationship or whether you choose to think they're the devil. I mean, it's completely your outlook on life, I think. And you know, you've formed your outlook, and I think, for the most part, Jade, it's a healthy outlook, right? I believe so. I really do. And I'm not being facetious. Don't think I'm being facetious here, Jade, by any means. And I think you've made a wonderful product out of your journey as well, with this book. Because again, as I sat down and I read the book, I get two meanings out of the book. As I told you off air, not only do I get the meaning of, you know what, you can form, and I'll tell you a little story, and I've told this story before on air, but I'll tell you this story as well, with my nephew, who's now, he's a grown man and has a young child of his own. We were up, and I've told this story before on the show, but we were up at a cabin in northern Minnesota, and he was just a young boy at the time, and we were in the infancy of the show. And we were sitting outside, and he had known that I was out in the desert out in the Southwest signaling for UFOs with lasers. And he had asked me if I could do it with a flashlight because we had a high-powered mag light with us. And I said, I don't know. And we were kind of watching the stars at the time, because we're out over a lake and it's beautiful and there's no light shine from the city. And he said, Uncle Timmy, is that a UFO? And it looked to me like it could have been a satellite. I said, I don't know, buddy. It's kind of traveling kind of weird. You know, it had a weird trajectory. I said, shine your flashlight at it, thinking, you know, it can't be. It's got to be a satellite. It's not. It's probably not anything. Well, this thing stopped right where it was. When he stopped, you know, flashes his little mag light at it, which it wasn't little. It was pretty big. And it got bigger. The light got bigger and then went smaller and then got bigger again, then went smaller. And then boom, shot straight up. That was no satellite. I know that much. But it kind of signaled to him and he went, whoa! Then proceeded to run into the cabin and tell everybody we saw a UFO. To which most of my family just kind of poo-pooed it and went, oh, whatever, you know. But at that point, you choose to make it what it is. If you were to ask my nephew now, who's a young man, what happened that day, it's up to him. Did he see something wonderful and have a great experience with his uncle out at the lake, or did he imagine it? Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I have my memory, and I think we saw something really cool that day. It's again, you may say, well, Tim, with all that rambling, what are you getting to? But with the book, I got two meanings out of it, and that's this. You either have this great adventure, and I'd like to think that this is galaxy wide, right? That not only are people alike here on this world, that we reach out and we get companionship with each other, but maybe if there's another being on the other side of the galaxy, that they'd like to think that there's someone else out there on the other side of the galaxy that they can relate to as well, right? And that we could meet each other and have these fun adventures, which there's that in this book. Or I also pulled the meaning in this book that there's this hero named Jade who's having these adventures, and it could be that she's having these adventures with these imaginary friends. It's one or the other. But either way, it's a wonderful book. I know the meaning that she had behind the book. I'm not saying that, but you can construe it either way. I know the meaning you had behind the book, and that's not the meaning you had behind the book, but that's just the meaning I pulled from it.
And that's why it makes such a good kid's book. Either way you look at it, it's just a beautiful story.
It is. It's a wonderful story. It's a beautiful story. And again, I encourage people to go get the book for the little ones in their family. I'm going to go get it for my little one in my family so that he has it, because he's very, very little, but he loves books. So it's called Papa and Me, The Secret Life of Jade. Any other notes about the book that you want to tell us about before we take off today, Jade?
You know what? There's another ET I received a hug from in Eden, and it's one of the pages where he's like a short brown. Mm-hmm. I've had two hugs from ETs, and each time it was a time when I felt really alone, like I had no one, but I had this connection with them. So that's why this book is just something that's a piece of my heart. And I know that there's other people who kind of feel the same way. And I'm happy that they're going to be able to, you know, have something like this for them and for their children if they have any.
Yeah. 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 It's an incredibly touching book. And I really do encourage people to go get it. And I think even if you're just curious and you want to pick it up and read it, it's one of those things that brings you right back to being a kid. You're just right back in that spirit of being 4 or 5 years old and wanting to take this adventure along with Jade. So it's such a great book. But again, the name of the book is Papa and Me, The Secret Life of Jade. And again, if you have a little one in your family who loves to dream along the stars and is looking for that little piece of adventure out there, or you're looking for a cool little book to read at bedtime, that's that book. Or if you're just looking for a cool little story to have around, maybe for when the grandkids come to read, at night before they go to bed. This is one of them. But we'll have a link in the description of this program for you. Jade Astra, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Folks, we're at the weekend, and that means only one thing. We've got lots of stuff in store. It's going to be freezing this weekend here in Minnesota. I don't know about you guys. I know that the cold extends all the way from the north to the south, but also we've got snow. We had plenty of snow at the end of the week here. So I know one of two things. One, we've got brand new swag in the Darkness Radio shop. That includes sweatshirts and T-shirts and hoodies. Go check it out. Brand new swag from Darkness Radio, including Scully sweatshirts and hoodies. True Crime Tuesday hoodies, which we've never had before. We've never had a True Crime Tuesday hoodie. Make sure that you go check it out. DarknessRadioshow.com in the shop, and then go get it. We've got coffee mugs as well. We've got desk mats. We've even got a Darkness Radio rocks glass. So if you want to enjoy a cocktail, it says life is short, I'll drink to that. Go check it out. DarknessRadioshow.com and in the shop. Second, almost all iPhones now have upgraded to iOS 26.2. Make sure your Darkness Radio app is uploaded for Apple for iOS 26.2. Make sure that is upgraded as well. Let's see. What else? As far as other business goes, if you're listening to the show and you're not watching it on YouTube, it's the original Darkness Radio on YouTube. Otherwise, you go to darknessradioshow.com and click on the show you're looking for. You should see the video and the audio there. If the video is not quite uploaded, it'll be just another day or so. But generally, the video is not uploaded right away with the audio. But the video and the audio should be in one place. They all live right there on darknessradioshow.com. Otherwise, go to our YouTube page. Make sure you like and subscribe the original Darkness Radio right there on YouTube. All right, that'll do it for this weekend. Again, folks, it's been cold. It's been snowy. Make sure that you go help an elderly or disabled person in your neighborhood or in your family. Again, we got to help out those of us in the community and those of all of us who are elderly or disabled. Make sure you're a light in someone's darkness this weekend, and go out and help the elderly or disabled. There's lots of walks that need to be shoveled. People need groceries delivered. People need help in their communities, medicine delivered, things like that. And people need warm coats and blankets and things like that. Make sure that they get those as well. It is freezing out there, folks. Make sure you help someone who's elderly or disabled in your community. Be a light in someone's darkness this weekend. A message from your friends here at Darkness Radio. For Beer City Bruiser, for Mally Fox, for Jessica Freeberg, for Travis Thorpe, I'm Tim Dennis. We'll see you next week for the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio.